My name is Scott Heckes, and I'm a board member for the Kingsley Art Club and Educational Foundation. We're happy to have all of you here today. It's my honor today to introduce our speaker, Terezita Romo. Tere is an art historian, a curator, an affiliate faculty member in Chicano Studies at UC Davis. She has published extensively on Chicano art, including as a contributor to the Smithsonian American Art Museum exhibition catalog, Printing the Revolution, The Rise and Impact of Chicano Graphics. She's the author of an artist monograph on the artist Malaquias Montoya, and she's the co-editor of the Chicano Art, a critical anthology from 2019. Tere has served as a chief curator for the Mexican Museum in San Francisco and arts project director at the National Museum of Mexican Art in Chicago. As an independent curator, she has organized numerous exhibitions, including Art Along the Hyphen, Mexican-American Generation at the Autry Museum in Los Angeles, and Reframing Comunidad, the Art of Esther Hernandez and Shizu Salamando at the National Museum of Mexican Art. She is the co-curator of Traitor, Survivor, Icon, the Legacy of La Malinche, that was at the Denver Museum in 2022 and toured to the Albuquerque Museum and the San Antonio Museum. She recently organized the RCAF in Mictlan, the 50th anniversary of Dia de los Muertos at the Sacramento History Museum, and of course, Rebels with La Cosa, Royal Chicano Air Force Art and Activism, 1970 to 1990 at the Crocker Art Museum on the 3rd floor. So if you haven't seen that, please take some time to do that. And I do want to add too that over the last several months, there have been quite a few activities surrounding the celebration of the Royal Chicano Air Force, much to the effort and credit of our speaker today, Tere Romo, who's put a huge amount of time in coordinating all of those. And I think for that, she deserves a huge hand. Thank you. Thank you. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce my friend and former co-worker at the California Arts Council, Tere Romo.
Thank you, Scott, for inviting me to be part of the Kingsley Speaker Series. I also appreciate all of you coming here and being with us this afternoon. So as you know, I'm the curator of the Rebels with La Causa exhibition currently up on the 3rd floor. And today I'm going to share my thoughts on several of the posters and the aesthetics that informed their creation. As an art historian, my curating process and decisions are specifically informed by aesthetics as well as history. Thus, for me, this exhibition is first and foremost a survey of works on paper, in this case, posters that were produced by artists. They, like other art forms, such as paintings and sculptures, reflect aesthetic influences as well as aesthetic choices. However, the posters of the Royal Chicano Air Force, also known by its initials, RCAF, provide specific content, mostly through text, but also by their cultural references. In their attempt to stand out, as all posters do, they also strive to communicate instantly. However, it is the artist's personal and bicultural aesthetics that I believe accentuates their visual power. So before I begin, full disclosure, though not an artist, I am an insider as a member of the Royal Chicano Air Force. In my catalog essay, I cite my membership as my primary reason for becoming an art historian and curator. With this exhibition, it has, I believe, been a benefit, both in terms of connections to its artists, but also access to first-person historical information. As some of you may know, the RCF began as an artist collective, recognized for their signature murals, this one at Southside Park, as well as the posters. However, rather than a survey of myriad posters, I focused on those created for the activities of the larger RCAF membership, which included writers, musicians, dancers, filmmakers, actors, photographers, labor organizers, and politicians such as our late mayor, Joe Serna, along with 2 organizations, Breakfast for Niños and La Raza Bookstore, which later became La Raza Galeria Posada, both no longer in existence. With this strategic lens, I present a case for how it was this multidimensional membership and combination of art and activism that created a deep and long-lasting artistic and social legacy. Guiding my choices was an aesthetic framework for the RCF unique contributions to Chicano art history, as well as American art. However, before I dive in, I think it's important to provide you with some national historical context as well. This collective that came to be known as the Royal Chicano Air Force came out of the Chicano movement, which in California gave birth to farm worker struggles for better wages, decent living conditions, and basic human rights. It was an integral component of the larger civil rights activism for political and social justice by many marginalized groups throughout the world in the 1960s. In the United States, along with the Black Power, American Indian, Asian American, and women's liberation, the Chicano movement changed our nation's political history. The Chicano stance against assimilation was predicated on the integration of culture, art, and politics, along with its involvement in the national civil rights movement, Vietnam War protests, and student activism. The Chicano movement included specific regional struggles, such as the Spanish land grant recuperation in New Mexico and the establishment of a political party in Texas. Chicana and Chicano artists chose to utilize their art to promote cultural pride and political activism, which was best served by visually impactful murals and posters, thus becoming synonymous with Chicano art. The poster became the prominent voice for many Chicano artists, given its accessible technology, portability, and cost effectiveness. They were carried in marches, demonstrations, and UFW boycott events. They also were posted on storefront windows, walls, telephone poles, any surface that provided widespread visibility. The poster's multiplicity also allowed for wider dissemination of Chicano political and cultural ideology nationally, and in some cases even internationally. The Rebels with La Causa exhibition features posters from the RCF's most prolific first 2 decades, from 1970 to 1990. It presents a survey of not only the poster's artists, but also the range of aesthetics they express through their mastery of screen printing techniques and especially their experimentation with graphic arts. Moreover, with the confluence of bicultural Mexican and American influences and imagery, as well as subversive humor, RCF posters and prints refute definitions of Chicano art as solely being political, ethnic, or folk art. Their blurring of political statement, announcement poster, and art print contributed to Chicano's graphics' distinct contribution to American art history. It is these, what I call aesthetic maneuvers, that I want to share with you today. For the title of my talk, I draw from the nomenclature of their military persona, both as a humorous reference, but also the definition of maneuvers, which is, quote, to require care and skills, end quote. As an early example, this is Max Garcia's Baton Rouge poster for a rock concert at the Washington Neighborhood Center, a multi-service facility located near downtown Sacramento in one of the city's oldest barrios. The composition is dominated by a red circle in which a disembodied Christ-like head with a blue beard, long wavy hair, and a crown of thorns stares at the viewer. On either side, the profiles of two skulls turned toward the head, as if whispering in his ears. The fuzzy, prickly, hand-drawn lettering, rendered in different sizes and in seemingly random selection of upper and lower cases, adds to the edgy visual effect. Garcia was a professional artist who had studied graphic design and illustration at the Art-Centered College of Design in Pasadena before he joined the RCAF. His training is evident in this early poster, as well as the bicultural influences as seen in his mixture of Christian religious iconography and ancient Mesoamerican death symbology. The three-color print also incorporates pop and psychedelic art styles that were prevalent in rock concert posters of the 1970s. For example, the skull recalls the promotional art and deadhead persona of the rock group Grateful Dead. However, his choice to emphasize the figure contrasts with other musical posters of the early 70s that highlighted the names of the concert bands and venue information. Significantly, Garcia's print for American rock bands performing in a Chicano barrio shows his ability to meld divergent sources and appeal to viewers who didn't know they were looking at Chicano art. Garcia would become the founding director of the RCAF Centro de Artistas Chicanos, their nonprofit organization established in the community in 1972. The Centro would secure public funds to operate a print workshop with CETA-funded artists who would teach classes on poster design and printing. They would produce thousands of posters that ranged from simple two-color announcements to multicolored and photo silkscreen prints, many with 100 copies. In the process, the RCAF's artist wing would alter Chicano art, history, and American graphic arts. In the fall of 1969, artists and compadres Jose Montoya and Esteban Villa arrived at Sacramento State. Montoya was a participant in the Mexican-American Education Project, a statewide initiative that supported students pursuing master's degree in the social sciences. Villa was contracted by the project as an art consultant. As professional artists, they brought their Chicano artistic perspectives and academic training as graduates of the California College of Arts and Crafts. These early artworks showcase their distinct aesthetic sensibilities as well as their mastery of the mediums, which attracted many aspiring Chicana and Chicano art students along with other community artists. Together in 1970, they formed a collective and called themselves the Rebel Chicano Art Front. Within a couple of years, this Rebel Chicano Art Front became the Royal Chicano Air Force, after their initials were confused with the Royal Canadian Air Force. Quote, people would come up to us and ask, do you guys have something to do with the Royal Canadian Air Force? After a while, we started saying, no, we're the Royal Chicano Air Force. According to Montoya, the name went along with the whole notion of not only of an air force, but an air farce, with its ironic sense of making fun of ourselves, end quote. This can be seen in Villa's announcement poster, Cinco de Mayo con el RCAF, in which an aviator in full military garb, including leather jacket, flight cap, and goggles, faces the viewer. He carries a briefcase with Aztlán written on it. In the background is a World War II biplane with indigenous symbols and an image of a scorpion, denoting Villa's family roots in the Mexican state of Sinaloa. The discernible yet loosely defined figure and plane were created through a strategic placement of black ink on beige paper. The composition was augmented by a red sky in the top corners. As was true of most of the RCAF posters, the image dominates with the text rendered in thin letters condensed at the bottom. The adoption of Air Force in their name provided a reservoir of aviation imagery and military references for their art. Their integration of flight imagery allowed the RCAF to employ humor as a form of activism, with the illusion also of community protection. Artistically, it should also be noted that Villa's poster description of the RCAF's presentation of arte, música, poesía not only denotes the bilingual audience, but conveys a multidisciplinary membership. It would be this elastic membership and its move into the community that expanded the RCAF beyond its origins as an artist collective, impacting its aesthetics as well. In another early poster, one can even see international influences. Irma Lerma Barbosa, a painter and performer, joined the RCF while an art student at Sac State. In 1973, under the auspices of the Centro de Artistas Chicanos, she organized the Primer Conferencia Femenil, first women's conference at a local church. The conference focused on Chicana artists who participated as speakers and exhibition artists. The year before, she had traveled to Cuba as a volunteer within the Venceremos Brigade to harvest sugarcane. There she was exposed to Cuban graphics, which can be seen in her poster promoting the conference. The platforms become a woman's face with long hair and arms holding up an oval sphere that contains the announcement text alongside a borderless map of North and South America, signifying unity and solidarity with all the women in the hemisphere. With her frontal gaze and powerful arms, the overall image is one of strength. Forming a frame, the broken chain signified Chicana's power to break free of patriarchy and racial oppression. By also including the image of America as one continent, she extended the call for liberation beyond Chicanas. Though the female figure dominates the composition, the effective use of space and the intentional off-registration appearance of the chain links softens the flatness of the central graphic images. Her use of two colors, black and red, on bright yellow paper is also an example of how, even with minimal ink colors, RCF artists were able to generate strong visual impact. In 1975, the RCF artists embarked on their most prolific phase of poster production and initiated what I would describe as a cultural renaissance in Sacramento. Now a nonprofit corporation, the Centro de Artistas Chicanos was offered space at the former Holy Angels School near Southside Park, a Mexican barrio near downtown. To promote its new home, their director, Ricardo Favela, produced El Centro de Artistas Chicanos, a visual play on the business card format. In hand-drawn lettering, the Centro's name is clearly seen at the top, with the contact information wrapping around the edges, acting as a frame. In a nod to their Chicano movement roots, their location is cited as in Sacra Califas instead of the city and state official's name. On both sides, Favela added the United Farm Worker logo. At the bottom, their services are listed bilingually, quote, posters, murals, y clases de arte para la gente, art classes for the people. Favela embellished the RCF logo at the bottom with extended stylized wings on each side, which became another design element that other artists personalized as well. Like other RCF artists, Favela favored a composition in which the image, mainly figures, dominated and included readable but not very sizable text. In this poster, the central image serves as a humorous portrayal of two of the Centro's staff artists, Rudy Cuellar, who is here with us, thank you, Rudy, and Luis Gonzalez wearing his signature cap. They are depicted as whimsical calaveras, skeletons engaged in a heated conversation as Cuellar holds a silk screen up to the sun, revealing a tear that renders it unusable. A favored image, skeletons filled Favela's sketchbooks, doodles, and posters, many times in scenes reminiscent of illustrator Jose Guadalupe Posada, here pictured with his son, a major influence on him and other RCF artists. In their joint master thesis titled Posada, the Man in His Art, and which also included Favela's work, Juan Carrillo and Jose Montoya declared, quote, Posada reflected the times and the society in which he lived. Chicano artists are doing the same, end quote. Produced as low-cost tabloid-style newspaper, Posada depicted the daily life of Mexicans. He also rendered the elite class and political figures as skeletons, ridiculing their inability to escape death, the same fate that beheld the poor and the powerless. Favela admired Posada's use of calaveras to reflect human nature, but especially his incorporation of humor as a powerful tool for communication. Inspired by Posada, his skeletons enacted Chicano and Chicana experiences, and Favela contributed aesthetically with his posters for the Chicano-initiated observances of Dia de los Muertos in the United States. Not surprisingly, Favela's calaveras also appeared frequently on his ceramic pieces and collaborative murals. Besides being very productive for 3 years at the former school marked an artistically innovative period for the artists. Along with 5 CETA-funded positions, the center received support from the city, county, California Arts Councils, and National Endowment for the Arts. This not only provided financial stability for the staff artists and organization's budget, but also a source of funds to purchase better quality ink, paper, screens, and additional equipment, including a light table, copy camera for film positives and negatives, and an exposing unit for making the photo stencils. This additional equipment, operational funds, and CETA positions allowed the artists to produce greater quantities of posters for the community. More importantly, it afforded them dedicated time to experiment with iconography, composition, and complex printing techniques, such as the photo-based screen printing. Some of the staff artists taught classes and produced posters, others painted murals. However, Cuellar and Gonzalez became the Centro's most prolific screen printers, often assisting other artists, many times as named collaborators. Cuellar had transferred to Sac State in 1971 from Sierra College, where he studied ceramics. After he learned to screen print from Esteban Villa, he was enlisted to create many of the posters for the RCF campus events. In 1974, poster seen here, he incorporated a scene from a dream in a poster announcing a campus group exhibition. Mimicking a 3-dimensional book cover or painting, Chicano Art Expo 74 features half a cantaloupe floating in space with the moon in the upper right-hand corner. The background was created by utilizing the different split fountain technique that produces a smooth transition between different colors. In his poster, it goes from dark blue down to a bright orange, creating a setting sun effect along the Earth-like shape at the bottom. Within the dark colored portion of the sphere, the hand-drawn stylized letters create readable text. The poster's incorporation of Sacra Estate U and the RCF's logo, replete with wings and a military star, adds humorous iconography to a surreal composition, announcing a Chicano art exhibition. Working at the Centro, Cuellar continued his eclectic aesthetics as the de facto poster artist for the Sacramento region's active lowrider scene. In 1978, he received a request from the NorCal Lowriders Council for a poster to promote their 3rd annual car show and dance. The Lowrider Carrucha Show poster's layered composition is dominated by an image of a 1964 Chevy Impala against a dark night sky filled with stars and a crescent moon. Viewed from the front, the carrucha, slang for car, is depicted in a hopping elevated motion that seems to propel it out of the picture plane. Though hand-drawn from a photograph, Cuellar's reinterpretation features the soft shading of monochromatic colors and an accentuated front grille. A pink protruding shape that resembles a floating platform provides the car and the viewer with a visual grounding. It also functions as a graphic division from the lower half, containing the event details which are set against a gold background with further allusions to its cosmic setting. As with the Chicano Art Poster 74, Cuellar's mastery of the split fountain screen print technique is evident in the seamless transition between various colors in the Lowrider Carrucha Show. He also incorporated aspects of political activism along with cultural humor into the design. This can be seen in the illusion of No on 13, bumper sticker below the grill, along with Hecho en Aztlán, a Chicano variation on the Made in Mexico label on the platform. A popular Mexican saying referencing pork rinds at the bottom loosely translates as don't cause any trouble. But the literal English translation, don't look for noise in a pork rind, adds to the poster's humor. Night skies filled with stars formed an important element in many of Cuellar's signature posters. It would be easy to conclude that he was influenced solely by surrealism, a seminal movement during the 1920s that, quote, sought to release the creative potential of the unconscious mind, end quote, especially dreams. While he was exposed to surrealism as an art student, his cosmic iconography had personal roots. Quote, I've always been a spacehead, he said. My dad used to take us out at night to the outer side of Roseville when it was still country and wait for the meteor showers, end quote. With their artistically complex compositions that draw from art history, personal references, cultural content, and playful text, Cuellar elevated event announcements into visually compelling prints. Cuellar's fellow central artist, Luis Gonzalez, first encountered RCF artists as an English student at Sacramento State. An accomplished poet, Gonzalez read his work widely and was included in community anthologies. He also began producing and selling screen prints that featured his bilingual poems with personal encounters of love set against colorful backgrounds, some with political statements regarding the plight of Chicanas and Chicanos in the United States. Through observation and experimentation, Gonzalez not only became a master at screen printing, but also an aesthetic innovator, many times erasing boundaries between visual and literary arts. Enthralled with the poetry of E. E. Cummings and the Brazilian poet Augusto de Campos, Gonzalez began creating concrete poetry, poems where the text makes shapes of things, where the text makes a shape or an image. For him, screen printing became another means of self-publishing, a necessity given mainstream publishers' lack of interest in Chicana and Chicano literature. His proficiency grew, his concrete poem screen prints provided an inventive format for combining aesthetics and text, crossing over into art prints. This is especially evident in his prints with poems that create forms rather than create forms using repeated words or letters. Ultimately, his cross-disciplinary experimentation led to a unique Chicano art form, the concrete poem art print. In 1976, Gonzalez created Hasta la Victoria Siempre, one of the multiple posters in support of the UFW's efforts to pass California Proposition 14 to support farm workers' rights. The poster's composition as a concrete poem, along with its economy of imagery and colors, belied the complexity of its message and graphic innovation. The red silhouette figure is of Jose Montoya at a UFW picket line. The photograph was taken by Gonzalez's brother Hector, who also attended Sac State and took a class with Montoya. From afar, the typewritten words on bright yellow form a pattern that provides texture as well as evokes a sense of movement. Closer, the compacted black and seemingly random letters can be read to form the word Viva la huelga, long live the strike, a rallying cry at UFW strikes, and Viva la mañana, long live tomorrow. Taking its first title from a phrase associated with the Cuban revolutionary Che Guevara, Gonzalez's poster elevates farm worker rights to an international struggle, one that will continue until the promise of a better future for farm workers is fulfilled. That same year, Gonzalez expanded his ingenuous visual vocabulary using photography, flat graphic images, and cultural symbols, and expanded to creating painterly backgrounds that mimic abstract painting. His bold color palette and combinations were informed by bicultural sources, including, as he stated, American candy wrappers and Mexican blankets. This is evident in another Viva la Huelga poster, this one featuring an abstract background of expansive green in the lower portion with handwritten letters that spell out the phrase. At the top are two quadrants. One is sky blue, the other is red-orange with black foliage-like forms containing a barely discernible sign stating boycott Gallo, referencing the wine producer. In the center is a black and light blue figure of Montoya and the picket line from the same photograph that you saw previously. At the bottom, white block letters on black entreat the viewer to vote yes on 14 and quote, help the farm workers, end quote. Its bright colors and photo-derived composition is reminiscent of pop art, yet it also incorporates a painterly background consisting of abstract elements. With Gonzalez's inclusion of a direct appeal to the viewer, the image is another example of the way the RCF posters blurred art and politics, existing, quote, somewhere between the unique art object and mass media, end quote. Significantly, it circumvented the expressed coolness of pop art and its elevation of everyday objects devoid of meaning and created within anonymous factory-like production. Here, Gonzalez has enlisted American pop art for a culturally infused composition that assigns aesthetic gravity to a consequential message. In 1978, Cuellar and Gonzalez collaborated on what would become one of the RCF's most iconic posters. It was created to promote an exhibition, as you can see there, José Montoya's Pachuco Art Show, a historical update. Important cultural icons, Pachucas were Mexican-American youths who rejected assimilation into the American mainstream and yet did not identify with their Mexican parents' cultural standards either. Originating in the 1930s in El Paso, Texas, and spreading to Los Angeles and other cities in the Southwest, Pachucos developed their own distinctive dress style and caló lexicon. Because of their defiance, they were represented as violent gangs in the media. Montoya believed Pachucos to be the original Chicano freedom fighters and dedicated a solo exhibition of his paintings, drawings, and other works on paper to refute their negative portrayal. Along with his artwork, the exhibition included historical photographs collected from community members, along with documents uncovered by the RCF members at institutional archives regarding the so-called Zoot Suit riots in Los Angeles in 1942. Not surprisingly, the police jailed the young men wearing the Zoot Suits who had been beaten up and stripped of their clothes. In conjunction with the exhibition, a book was produced that incorporated the archival research along with Montoya's artistic statement and drawings. The exhibition was the culmination of many years of Montoya's artistic exploration of the Pachuco figure in multiple art forms. The exhibition included this early poster he had created to promote a campus theater production featuring the Palomar Ballroom that he had frequented in Fresno. The Pachuco was a main figure in a print for a collaborative calendar between the Centro and the Galeria de la Raza in San Francisco in 1977. However, for the José Montoya Pachuco art exhibition, he channeled another aesthetic influence. Posada, who I mentioned, had been the focus of his master's thesis. As recounted in an essay reprinted in our catalog, Montoya provided Cuellar with the drawing of a calaca, a skeleton dressed as a Pachuco with his wide brim hat, high-waisted baggy pants, and long dangling chain and shiny shoes. His bony fingers hold up a sign, art in capital letters, which functions both as a pronouncement and part of the exhibition's title. As with other RCF posters, the image dominates the composition, which in this case was the size of Montoya's drawing. However, Cuellar added another creative layer to the poster's production. He took the drawing in the original size and not only included exhibition information, but also added text in English, Spanish, Pachuco Caló, and Chicano movement slang. He then cut the entire design onto 4 linoleum blocks, this additional creative act providing an opportunity to insert more text as well as create texture behind the figure. After he joined the linos into one block, Cuellar applied black ink and printed on white paper, which can be seen in the slide. The black and white versions were photographed for the film positive used in the creation of the silkscreen. Cutting the available yellow cardstock to size, he and Gonzalez utilized the RCF signature split fountain process to produce the colorful background. With Cuellar's experimental process, they turned Montoya's drawing into multiple screen prints with the illusion of being unique block prints. Within the RCF, there were also artists who gravitated towards Mesoamerican indigenous spiritual philosophies and iconography. A graduate of the San Francisco Art Institute, Stan Padilla encountered the RCF as a practicing artist who had a deep understanding of his indigenous, in this case, Yaqui heritage. In the poster for the inaugural Fiesta de los Colores, he adapted a figure found in several murals at the ancient site of Teotihuacan in central Mexico. Known as the Great Goddess of Teotihuacan, she is depicted in the original mural mainly in red and some yellow, with a bird-like face surrounded by elaborate plumage and jewelry. In Padilla's composition, the goddess wears the mask of the rain god Tlaloc on her face and in the center of an ornate plumed headdress. Water flows behind her head and outstretched hands, becoming steady streams that form a stepped vessel at the bottom of the picture frame. Enveloped in this enclosed space is a circular form created by several additional circles with a frog in the center, a symbol of spring given its reliance on water to reproduce. Padilla used mainly yellow and green with red accents to transmit a feeling of spring. Quote, "I chose lime green to represent new growth, and the yellow is the sunlight, both which contribute to the renewal of nature. In our fiesta, it is the renewal of our culture," end quote. The rich yellow background is rendered with visual undulations at the edges, creating a sense of movement, as if the water is spilling out towards the sides. In his rendering of the powerful ancient goddess with contemporary colors and images of regeneration, Padilla, co-founder of the ceremony, captured the essence of Fiesta de Colores as a Chicana-Chicano ceremony. Juan Orozco was a transfer student at Sac State in the early 1970s and one of the art students that gravitated to Montoya and Villa. With them, he found the support he had been seeking to express his indigenous beliefs through his art. This can be seen in the poster for the Fiesta de Maíz ceremony in 1979. The ornate composition mimics a nicho, an enclosed space for a statue within a church. Orozco also drew imagery from Arizona's Hopis in his incorporation of the headdress-like images of doves and moons eclipsing the sun, which form around her head. The poster is both notable in its imagery as well as in Orozco's technical proficiency, which can be seen in the multiple colors that require precise color registration, accurate hand lettering, and a seamless transition of the background from light to dark blue that extends into the outer band to form a frame. In the center, the young woman who walks towards the viewer holds a platter with green corn. She's wearing a traditional quechcametal, which is a blouse, and a falda skirt with a stylized Mesoamerican corn glyph at the bottom. A faint pyramid can be seen behind her. She represents the Aztec goddess of corn, Chilonen, and the young girl that personifies her within the RCF ceremony. The poster brings together the colors of the sky, sun, and corn with indigenous symbols, effectively capturing the basic elements of the celebration of a young woman coming of age. While Orozco's imagery derives from his interpretation of the ancient goddess, The poster also personifies corn's enduring role as physical sustenance, and in this case, a symbol of spiritual resilience. Along with Ricardo Favela's posters for the Dia de los Muertos, Padilla and Orozco's posters documented the RCAF's 3 annual indigenous ceremonies, beginning with Fiesta de Colores in March that symbolized rebirth with children and youth as key participants. Held in June, the Fiesta de Maíz commemorated the Aztec corn goddess Chilones and the vital role of corn in Mexican and by extension Chicana culture. The Dia de los Muertos acknowledged the natural cycle of life and death and underscored the importance of honoring ancient ancestors as well as remembering the recently deceased. However, the RCAF's posters transmitted visually that while the ceremonies drew from ancient sources, these were not direct transplants of Mexican versions. In many respects, with their melding of contemporary artistic elements, including posadas, calaveras, sense of humor, with ancient indigenous symbolism, the RCAF aesthetics reflected in the posters became signifiers of Chicano-infused ceremonies themselves. A key component of a poster, RCAF artists also experimented with text to create visually impactful screen prints. An example is Lorraine Garcia's Necada's Mexican Independence Celebration and Parade, which also offers a Chicana-centered viewpoint on Mexico's independence movement and its leaders. The composition is dominated by a weaving design with the names Hidalgo, Josefa Ortiz, Morelos, and Guerrero, written above and across the center threads. Given their central role for independence from Spain, Father Miguel Hidalgo, Jose Maria Morelos, and Vicente Guerrero were well known in Mexico and to many Mexicans in the US. However, few are aware of Guerrero's African and indigenous heritage. A woman and another key protagonist in Mexico's fight for independence, Ortiz is not widely recognized in the US. With her depiction of the weaving's broken strands, Garcia Necata sought to graphically communicate, quote, the complex history and cultures comprised in our indigenous, colonial Spanish, African lineages, and acknowledge the strength of their contributions to the historical trajectory embodied by the September 16th moment in time, end quote. She studied ceramics at Sac State in the mid-1970s and later mastered drawings and painting. Her skills in various mediums is apparent in the poster's replication of three-dimensional weaving pattern and clean lines of the typeface. With the painterly strokes of the brightly colored handwritten names in the center, she not only added a visual counterpoint to the gray and black background, but also enhanced the aesthetic appeal with the neon-like lettering. Along with the annual civic events, the RCAF also sponsored Dia de las Madres, a Mother's Day program which was started by the RCAF's Breakfast for Niños. They were held on May 10th, Mexican Mother's Day, in a neighborhood school and provided free dinner and entertainment for families. Known for her detailed charcoal drawings on paper, Eva Garcia's composition for the announcement poster in 1979 allowed her to experiment. The composition is in a loose style, full of curves and open spaces, as well as strategic placement of dark gold. Her central image, rendered in red and gold, created a striking image of three women in profile, one adorned with a flower in her hair. Unlike other RCAF posters, alongside and to the right, large deco-like letters in gold against white spell out the name of the event. Though created almost 50 years ago, Garcia's elegant female forms, the vibrant tricolor background, and the hand-drawn stylized font continue to impart a contemporary design. Together, the Garcia sisters' posters also exemplify how artists who did not create posters as part of their art practice utilize this as an opportunity to explore another medium and expand on their imagery. Primarily a painter, Armando Cid encountered the RCF as a student pursuing a master's in art and printmaking after studying at the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena. His graphic training is apparent in this poster created for the 1976 Chicano Ball, a citywide alternative to the high school prom. It is dominated by a hazy film still from the movie Gone with the Wind, in which the main protagonists, Rhett Butler and Scarlett O'Hara, are in a passionate embrace. Teenage viewers most likely did not know the 1939 movie, but could relate to the romantic scene depicted. The image distortion and color palette were influenced by pop art and recall Warhol's portrait screen prints of celebrities, as well as Roy Lichtenstein's pixel art comics. With its movie reference, the poster also nods to Mexico's golden age of movie posters of the 1940s, many of which also focused on romantic or passionate scenes. However, the large rub-on letters and image frame in a metallic blue grade on clean white background impart a contemporary look that heightens the poster's visual appeal. Artistically, it's also a clever juxtaposition of an image from an old American movie to announce a rite of passage for young Chicanos and Chicanas. It's also an early example of Cid's art practice that drew fearlessly on divergent art historical sources for his aesthetics. Almost a decade later, this multiplicity of art sources can be seen in the poster Cid created for his solo exhibition, Tacos y Otras Cosas, at La Raza Galeria Posada. It features one of the exhibited paintings, which depicted a large blue sphere with the silhouette of the purple UFW eagle. In front is a loosely drawn bent figure using the short hoe, a farming tool outlawed in California. Below is a large rolled-up flower taco outlined in blue. Positioned in the bottom is the text with the exhibition information. The background begins in dark red at the top and blends seamlessly into a dark blue at the bottom, providing a dark contrast to the images. The sharp, flat graphics accentuate the bold colors, but are softened by the curves of the figure and the stylized taco. This painting and others in Cid's exhibition were playing with the images of Mexican food in the vein of Wayne Thiebaud's desserts, including cakes and ice cream cones, among others. However, the otras cosas, the other things, were images emitting social commentary. The UFW Eagle expressed Cid's solidarity with the union's fight for better living conditions for farm workers. This painting includes a farm worker. The painting includes a farm worker, his bent back accentuating the hard physical labor involved in sustaining California's massive agribusiness. The short hoe is a reminder that even laws do not guarantee compliance. The taco is a Mexican Chicano staple, but also a direct result of work and toil, and the toil of all farm workers. In some ways, Cid's art historical reference to Thiebaud's beautiful and pristine desserts was also his way of drawing attention to how and who made those desserts, leading us back to farm and dairy workers as well. In my catalog essay, I end with this poster, The Singer by Juan Cervantes, who joined the RCAF after transferring to Sac State from a community college. His training in illustration is apparent in his playful depiction of a Chicano singer with sunglasses and a microphone strutting in a checkered dance floor in front of a bright red circle. Captured in performance, his face turns to the side with his mouth open in song. The forward movement of the figure's elongated front legs breaks the picture plane, reminiscent of the cartoonist Robert Crumb's Keep on Trucking cartoon figure, introduced in his counterculture Zap comic, which became popular in the 1970s. Cervantes' strategic use of bold red and black on white paper to delineate the figure creates a sense of motion and drama within the one-page comic composition. In addition, his design intentionally created an art print that could become an announcement poster by eliminating the black tile bottom section and inserting text. As such, it underscores how the RCF poster's aesthetic foundations guided the artist's community-based production as well. Chicano posters emerged in the mid-1960s as an integral component of the social-political Chicano movement, with an emphasis on the integration of art and politics rather than being mutually exclusive. In their synthesis of multiple artistic influences and their bicultural heritage, Chicano poster artists created a new visual vocabulary to counteract the onslaught of negative stereotypes, as well as to promote agency in their communities, an art of resistance and affirmation. Recognizing the importance of images in our society, they also consciously set out to circumvent Eurocentric standards for, quote, art and its elitist foundations. They embraced their ability to not only produce political, in quotes, posters, but also, quote, art posters on their terms. Even artists who chose to produce strong political messages many times required more complex readings from their viewers. Unique to the RCF was also their genesis and composition. While formed on a university campus and primarily composed of Montoya, Villa, aspiring artists, and other community artists, the group also included community organizations. I believe that it was this diversity of artistic training and aesthetic influences that generated visually powerful posters. Even those promoting Mexican civic events provided a uniquely Chicana historic and gender perspective. Other posters refuted the prevalent perception that Chicana and Chicano graphics were only agitprop. Even the text in their posters even the text in their posters often incorporated words from multiple languages, including English, Spanish, along with their slang, and Pachuco Caló and Chicano movement nomenclature. As noted by UCLA professor and curator Cho Noriega, this revealed, quote, the considerable play that exists in both language and image making, end quote. In many ways, making the words into objects, as I was able to show you in some of the posters. The RCF utilized humor also as a potent form of communication and as a means of resistance and defiance. Their deft promotion of military persona also opened other potent sources for their multi-layered aesthetics. As defined, aesthetics, which is from the Greek word for sense perception, and philosophically the branch of humanities concerned with ideas and ideals of beauty. Within the RCF, aesthetic choices were at the service of the artist, but for the greater good. In effect, they took their power to make an art that was not only meaningful, but also produced in opposition to the dictum that art cannot have a purpose beyond expressing narrow definitions of, quote, art with a capital A. They recognized the importance of image making in our society and the visual and media onslaught bombarding us daily. For them, aesthetics ceased to be an art for art's sake decision. Instead, there was a larger goal, a larger goal for a poster or a print that transcended the limitations of ink on paper. They strove to produce the best image aesthetically, whether it transmitted event information, a message of empowerment, a call to action, or an indictment on inequality in our society. Thus, as a tool of mass media distribution, the artist's strategy was to reach specific viewers, yet to have the sheer power of the graphic attract multiple audiences. Finally, RCF artists, like others during the Chicano movement, they truly believe that art has the power to transform individuals and thus change society. And I believe it was this belief that grounded and fueled the RCF's artist. They understood their role as individuals who did not stand outside of society or history, but assumed the responsibility to shape both aesthetically and, if needed, through political action. In the process, they created an art form that served and reflected rather than solely validated individual careers and imposed an imposed Eurocentric art. With their aesthetic maneuvers between cultures as well as against the dominant art canon, RCF artists contested the narrow definitions of an American art and in the process contributed to an expanded and more accurate art history. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tere. Thank you. We have time for a few questions. William has a mic here, so if anyone has a question, raise your hand, and we'll get William to get the mic to you. Any questions, anyone? We good? Oh, are we right in the middle there? Great job today.
Thank you.
Hi there, my name's Tom Hawkinson. I teach at an art college in San Francisco, so thank you so much for this really underappreciated history of these posters and their creation. I was really surprised by some of the subtlety of the messages embedded in some of the posters. In particular, I think there was a mention of boycott Coca-Cola, for example. One of the posters had a no booze at the June festival. And could you just say a little bit about, I know there's some, the overt messages are maybe a little bit more obvious, but how were some more subtle cultural messages used in the posters?
I think part of it is that there were, and I tried to make the point that there was a lot of layers. So even for the posters that were directly about an event, so a Cinco de Mayo or whatever it was, that there were, that the artist felt like here's an opportunity to not only do something aesthetically, but to get messages across. So to me, that was the strength that I felt, that the artists were able to do that. So it wasn't, okay, let me just get the word out about this event and give you the details and then that's it, right? It was really more about them being artists and then approaching it as what do they want to do with that image to not only get across the fact that you have certain information, and even then sometimes the information, like I said, was squished down to the bottom. You really had to look to see, okay, when is this happening and where am I going? But that the image itself, that was the main communicator. And then within that, a layer of if the UFW, like always making sure that there was this connection about how important that was, if there was a way to do that, aesthetically. And also the humor part of it, so that in a way it kind of communicated on a different level. So using everything that they could, but doing it in a way that then was them being as artists and not just communicating information for the sake of information. Obviously that was important, but to really get across more to attract the viewer to it, and then be able to look at it and find reference points that they could connect to, whether it was culturally or the humor of it, or knowing that the UFW logo, what that meant, and that it signaled, support.
In looking at the display up on the third floor, it was very interesting to see how many different sources you gathered the posters that were displayed. I imagine there were many that you were not able to include. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about where are the best places to find this art throughout the year and over time.
Yeah, unfortunately, and that's one of the reasons that I really wanted to do this exhibition, is because, as I said before, I was, since '74, I was around it and exposed to it. But the fact that I felt like here's all this art and nobody's seeing it beyond the ones that see it on the storefronts or on the telephone poles or anything like that. And then also recognizing that it was part of a larger movement and that each artist had their own aesthetics, as I tried to show, and they were coming at it from different perspectives. And to me, I finally feel like everyone else is catching up. And part of that is in this area, artists have to be seen by someone else. It has to be recognized from some outside force. And I think that happened with the Smithsonian exhibition. Then a lot of people that didn't pay attention before are now paying attention. But it's not very accessible to the point that it should be. Some institutions have posters in the collection, but not as many as they should. And you can't go to, galleries to see the work. So I think it's starting, but it's got a long ways to go. And I think part of it is because it is Chicano art, and so, I hope I made a case about how that has happened and not happened. But I think also pushing against the fact that these are works on paper and they're posters. And I think there's this hierarchy in the art world that is slowly coming around, but not totally there yet, where it's seen as, they're multiples, so therefore they're not as valuable as a singular painting, right? That's only one of them. And the reality is that even if you do 100 posters, and especially screen printing, the way you screen the colors, however many colors are on top of each other, no one is the same. Each print is different, even though you're doing the same design, but it still doesn't register, I think, yet. And so I think Chicano posters are fighting against that, the fact that posters in and of themselves are not valued as much as they should be. And that's why I try to make a case about that they are works on paper, just as you have, drawings and watercolors and other art forms like that.
Well, again, thank you all for coming, and please join us across the hallway for a reception. You'll have some time to ask Tere some more questions and find out more about the exhibit upstairs.
And you can ask the artist. One of the artists is here. You can.
Rudy Cuellar, right here. Rudy, you want to stand up? So, great. So, thank you very much.